do a lot. What I'd love to do is take a few minutes to talk about what happens once the offer gets accepted. Because I know you do a lot of work and coaching with your clients and education with them to understand each phase after the offer gets accepted, because the real work is finding the house, getting the offer accepted, but then there's still work to be done before you.
Absolutely, yes. And I'm not one of those agents that will leave you afterwards, and they are out there, believe me.
Yes.
So everybody's like, oh, so now, you're done. I'm like, no, I'm not done. Even if you don't have an inspection. So first of all, the offer gets accepted. We get the signatures. Very important, which again, a lot of people don't understand. Verbally doesn't mean anything. We get the signatures, then I'll usually take the deposit check. So any offer, you have to put down $1,000, or some people actually shouldn't say $1,000. It can really be any amount. I usually ask my buyers just to do the $1,000. That check will have to go to the listing agent's office in most cases. Sometimes the attorney from the seller will hold the escrow, but it's called an escrow account. So the money will go into the escrow account, whoever that is who's holding it, right? So the check has to go to the listing agent's office right away, because it's binding only really then when they have a deposit. And again, it doesn't have to be $1,000. It can be a different amount as well. All the money that will go into that escrow account, whomever is holding it, will go towards your down payment. A lot of people also don't understand that. So let's say you have 5% in that escrow account after you sign the purchase and sales agreement. And if you only happen to put down 5% with your financing, you would only have to bring then the closing costs to the closing, not an extra 5%. A lot of buyers don't understand that. All the money's held in this escrow account will go towards whatever you're putting down when the time of the closing comes.
So let's say you have $100,000 is going to be your 20%, just to keep the numbers easy. And you write your offer, and I mean, when you sign your purchase and sale agreement, you put down $20,000. When you go to closing, you're really just bringing that $80,000 delta plus the closing costs.
Correct.
Exactly. 20,000 is applied. Yep. So I think that is something a lot of people get confused about. You're right.
Yes, I hear that all the time. They ask, and then sometimes they see, even on all the numbers, the 5% or whatever they might have put down in the escrow account is still on there to bring. I said, no, this is just all the numbers. This is just what you're putting down. You still have that money in it. It's not going, it's not going to go into cyberspace. It's just the reason why you have it in there. So you have a smaller amount first with the offer, because then the offer becomes binding, right? Because if you just write up an offer, you can just walk away and so, you just, and the seller has no one. Actually, in this case, they probably have 5 or 6 backup offers.
They back up.
Yeah. And then if you choose to have a home inspection, if your offer gets accepted, even with a home inspection, which is great. I have great referrals for home inspectors. Obviously, I always ask people if they want to use their own. I'm perfectly fine, but I have a great list of inspectors, loan officers. Obviously, number 1 is Shant on my list. I have contractors. I have a huge list that only my clients get, because I worked on this list for 20 years with people that I've all used myself and that I've referred many, many times, and my clients have been very happy with. So I call it my buyer client only, or actually my sellers get it to my client only contractor and referral list. So after you do the home inspection, if you're able to do one, you'll move to purchase and sales. If you don't do a home inspection, you go right to the purchase and sales contract, which is the main sales contract. So an offer obviously is legally binding, but it's an offer to purchase. But the purchase and sales agreement, that's something you should really choose an attorney. You don't have to in Massachusetts. I suggest to all my clients, hire a real estate attorney, preferably the people that I work with. Also, you guys have on the list, so that attorney can also do the bank work. So I have a lot of attorneys that charge either nothing for reviewing a purchase and sales agreement, or very little if they also can do all the bank work. And then a lot of people say, oh, isn't that a conflict of interest? I don't think it is, because the bank, really pretty much owns most of your home, unless you're putting down 60% and they only own 40. So, the attorney works for the bank, but the bank is really the client working with the bank, right? I never thought it's
It's not a conflict because they have the same common interest to have clear title. A bank doesn't want the bank's attorney is working with them to issue clean title and to give them a title insurance policy. And that same title insurance policy is also then issued for the owners, and the owners gets the title insurance policy. So each of their attorneys is looking 50 years back at the Registry of Deeds to see that it's clean title. So you can either pay two people to do that job or one.
That's why I always suggest, and I have referrals for that. I like to work with the same team because everybody knows my work style. I know that things get done when I give it to the people that I've worked with over 22 years. They know what needs to be done. I know things get done, and it's just such a easy feel, not just for me, but most importantly for my client, because you don't want to have to sit there and worry, oh my God, will it really get, the mortgage, will it really go through? Will the attorney really do what they're supposed to do? No, the people that I work with will do what they're supposed to do. And I don't want to sound a little bit harsh, but it's it's for my clients, right? I need to have that well-oiled wheel going, because in the end, again, I don't want to stress anyone out. Home buying process is already stressful enough. It's most likely the biggest purchase that you will ever make in your life. And I always make it, or try to make it, as least stressful for my clients as possible. I will always take as much away from my clients when it comes to stress as I can. If there's any issues, I do not bring it to my clients. If I can solve, there's always problems, nothing is ever smooth. It's life, right? Things come up. I will deal with the things for my clients, and only if it's necessary, and if it's something that needs their authorization or it really needs them to be involved, I will bring a problem to my clients. I try not to even get any problems, or make anything an issue. I try not to have an issue become a problem, right, or a larger issue for my clients. I'll take care of it with the team of people that I work with, unless it's something that obviously needs their attention. I would never do anything behind their back. I'm talking about, there's a little, I don't know, a little snatch in the mortgage, or there is, I don't know, there's a paper smoke detectors, for example, right? They didn't pass. So I'm not going to bring this to my clients. I'll take care of them that they pass, right? Yeah. Why would those issues I'm talking about.
You save them from a lot of headaches. Also, having 22 years experience in the business, you've been able to vet people for your clients tremendously. So partners and attorneys and inspectors, who shows up, does a good job, and pulls over at the side of the road in a parking lot, locks their doors, and helps, like you do with the offer, right? When they need it. So people who answer the phone and are responsive.
Yeah,
I love that. So, okay, so once you get through that and it gets to time for them to close, what does that process look like for your clients?
Yeah. So right after, we sign the purchase and sales agreement, right? And then at that point, you put down 5%. That's the common rate you have in the escrow account. Again, sitting there, that amount will go towards your closing. If you're only putting down 5%, you would only bring the closing costs, right? After the purchase and sales agreement is signed, then it's really more time. That's when you guys get more involved on the mortgage end, right?
Our game time.
Yes, because then the appraisal usually gets done, right? You have the purchase and sales agreement signed. The appraiser will go out to the property. A lot of people don't understand that there is a realtor that appraises your property, but then there's a bank appraiser. And tell me if I'm wrong, but it's a pool of people. You have no control over who gets picked, right? It's almost
that is correct, right? Yeah.
And the appraiser will go out to the property. So in most cases, knock on wood, appraisers are very knowledgeable. They know what they're doing. They're looking at the market. They know what's happening in the market. And they know that pretty much all properties get sold over the asking price, right?
Yeah.
So they will, in most cases, appraiser. But the bank appraiser is someone we don't have any influence. People ask me, oh, can't you go there and give them comps? So first of all, the listing agent meets with the bank appraiser. It's not the buyer's agent. When I have a listing, I bring my comps of properties that sold, and I've been in most of those homes, and I will try to give those to the appraiser, and it's up to the appraiser if he chooses to take the comparable properties, right, that sold recently, in the same kind of vicinity, same, amenities, so forth. They might not take them. And that happened on my own refinancing too. I happened to have an appraiser who said, oh, no, I'm not going to take your comms. I know what I'm doing. So, you know, nothing. And then people get mad sometimes at, you know, the loan officers as we have no control what the bank appraiser, you know, and a lot of people don't understand that, but the bank appraiser will come into the property. The entire mortgage process is taking place. So, you know, buyers obviously have to provide their loan officer, preferably Sean, whatever he needs, your team needs, right, to sometimes extra pay stubs. I mean, you know, it's pretty much the mortgage end, so to say, the loan end, right, at that point. However, any questions, I'm always here to help from the time of the purchase and sales agreement until the mortgage contingency commitment date, if you have a mortgage contingency, which is huge, because only on that commitment date, on your loan commitment date, your loan of or your lender rather commits the client to the mortgage, not before to this particular home, right? I always explain to clients you are pre-approved, but then after you find a home, then the bank will do all the work on this particular home that you found to really commit giving you the loan for this particular home.
Yeah, and what's amazing about the mortgage commitment date, and when we talked about how to pick a good realtor, it's also how to pick a good lender. Like a great question to ask is what percentage of mortgage commitment dates do you meet? So that's a number that our team tracks very, very closely and takes great pride in, because a commitment extension is not uncommon in this business, but it doesn't need to be the norm.
Yes.
So, you know, a mortgage commitment extension can create a lot of stress on the buyer, right? It creates a lot of stress on the seller and starts to create some uncomfortable feelings because people get, you know, fearful that they're not going to get the mortgage, which is reasonable. So our team prides itself on having 96% of our mortgage commitment dates met. And we track that number. There's that 4%. Sometimes it's, you know, condo docs need to be recorded or things that are out of everybody's hands. But mortgage commitment, if you have a contingency in there for your mortgage commitment, it is really important that your lender's able to meet that. Or if for some reason they can't, they're going to let you and your agents know early on, so it's not a last minute scramble to figure out.
Yeah, because that never looks good. I've had that happen.
Feels good. Feels miserable.
Feels miserable when it was my own listing and somebody brought the buyer, and obviously then I don't have any control who the lender is because it's not my client, the buyer. And I had it happen 3 extensions, and then my seller gets obviously, you know, mad at me. Then I get mad at the buyer's agent because I don't want to look bad in front of any of my clients, even if it's out of my control. I said, you know what, get whoever your buyer's lender is, you got to tell them, get their act together, because it's the second extension request you had, and it's just not acceptable. Again, there's always, you know, a few exceptions,
right?
But you know, if you ask, and if that happens repeatedly, it just doesn't look good. And I certainly do not feel comfortable referring these lenders. Then, if it's, again, I'm not, you know, things can happen. There's always,
of course,
I'm talking about if this happens repeatedly, just like with me. Nobody is perfect, right? We all make mistakes. That's just life, because we're human beings. But it's what you do if you made a mistake, how you handle and fixing it and taking care of the issue, especially if it's something that you screwed up yourself, right? And B, what you learn from those mistakes and don't do them again, right?
Yeah.
So that's why it's so important to work with someone that knows what they're doing, that's reputable in the business, that has the experience. And when it comes to the lender, a lot of clients ask me about all these online companies. I'm not naming any names here, but there's a lot of ones where you just go online. They are online only. I cannot tell you how many times I had problems. They never met the dates, always extension requests for the commitment date. And so needless to say, if a buyer requests an extension for a commitment date, the seller does not have to agree to that.
Right.
Okay. So a lot of people don't understand that. Will most sellers agree to it? Yes, because they are so far down the road. Now we're talking about maybe a month from the accepted offer. Do they really want to go back on market and try to resell the property? No, but they do have the option to do so. They do not have to agree to that extension request. The buyer will get all the funds back because you have the mortgage contingency that protects you. It's not like you're losing your 5% you're in, but the seller can say, no, I'm just gonna, you know what? No, I'm not gonna deal with you. I'm going to someone else. And that's why it's so important to have a lender that actually delivers what they promise. And a lot of these online companies, I can't tell you how many times I ran into problems.
Yeah. And also in a market like right now where it's so competitive and home prices just are increasing, if a seller were to say, and I think if it's like a 1 or 2 day extension and there's a good reason behind it, they're going to do it, right? Because they don't want to start again. And, in good interest and good faith. However, a seller could put their house back on the market right now and still sell it fast. It's not like people are looking at it like what happened to that property in this market. Maybe some, but I mean, we're seeing that if a place were to go back on the market now, as opposed to a month ago, it would have just as much frenzy, if not more, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And usually, I mean, buyer clients might call you and ask why. That's what I always do when a property comes back on market, because I want to know, did it come back on market because there were major structural issues or other problems with the home? Then obviously I'll tell my clients, maybe it's not a good idea to look at it. But in most cases, it's something where dates weren't met and the seller just didn't want to give extensions. Couple of days, it's fine. But there are lenders out there, and that happened to me, that asked for a week and a half, 2 weeks extension. And again, a seller does not have to agree to that. It is always important. So if you have an attorney though, again, that's why I'm telling everybody, you're buying a property, do not save or try to save these extra $500 to have legal representation.
No.
Have an attorney, because when there's 2 attorneys involved, one for the seller side and one for the buyer side, in most cases, they will do the extension request and it gets done. I had a problem. The seller didn't want it. I didn't represent the seller. I had the buyer. The seller chose not to hire an attorney to present them. It was also a divorce situation, which sometimes gets a little tricky. So they tried to save the money, decided not to have a legal representation, which everybody, it's fine. You don't have to have legal representation. My buyer had an attorney though, because typically my clients listen to me and they're happy there. And there was an issue where the property, it almost fell apart, not to get into too many details, just because the seller didn't have the legal representation, but the buyer did. And then the sellers asked my buyer's counsel to do something for them. And
they're like, can you draft the deed?
He's like, I don't work for you. I work for the buyer. And it's very tricky, just like you want your buyer's agent, seller's agent, clear representations on both sides. That's where you also really want your seller's attorney and your buyer's attorney. It's a home purchase. You're spending a lot of money on this home. Do not try to nickel and dime and save $500 on a legal representation. It's a bad idea, and it can really make you in the end lose your property over a few $100s, which and
what's amazing too is real estate attorneys, which a lot of people don't know this prior, they're usually, if they're real estate attorneys who are doing this all the time, they are a flat fee. So you're not being billed hourly like $500. You're being billed for the entire transaction $500 often, maybe a little bit more if they're doing the bank work as well. And on the sell side, it's I don't know what the going rate is now, but maybe like $800 to $1,500 at most, right? I don't know.
That most, if they prepare the deed and everything, that's usually the rate. And again, if you look at the bigger picture, what you're spending, is it really worth, trying to save the $1,000? And I know it adds up, and everybody has like, oh my God, there's, now I have to pay the attorney. If there's an inspection, there's the home inspector, and I have to pay this and that. In the end, you're purchasing a property and you really want to, and it's a huge investment, and you want to make sure everything goes through well. Same as the title insurance. I don't know why people, don't go for the owner's title insurance. I do. And again, it's not something, it's probably a different topic for a different day, but I'd rather protect it. And again, it's a home purchase.
When people ask me about owner's title insurance, I say it's a suggestion. Just the same way it's suggested you pull that string when you jump out of a plane with a parachute on. Like, I suggest you pull the string to open your chute. Like, I suggest you get title insurance. Yeah, because it's a nominal fee when you think about what you're protecting, and anyone who's been in the industry for a while has heard a lot of title issues come up and be covered by title insurance. So it's an insurance like on something that you're like, that never actually happened, I'm gonna let it ride. Title insurance, it's a 50-year look back on the property, and most of the time everything is fine. But I say most of the time everything's fine. There are plenty of times and examples where there is something that comes up on title that was not found at the registry that would create a problem if you did not have your property protected by that title insurance policy. And the title insurance companies are great. They come in and they help right away.
Yes, and I always tell people the bank requires it on the lender side.
Right.
So if the lender requires it, don't you think it's something important? Because if they are not requiring it, if it would be really a nuisance, then they wouldn't go for it. So that's how, that's how I explain it. But, I'm very careful at always, I suggest things, and just like when I suggest, attorneys, I suggest lenders, I tell people, listen, this is my group of people that I love working with. You do not have to choose these people. I don't get anything from, if I refer you to such and such, but actually I shouldn't say that. I get peace of mind for you. That's what I'm getting from. I'm not getting reimbursed. There's no kickback, but I know if you choose the people that I've worked with for 22 years, you get that peace of mind that I get from the transaction, and you can just breathe, and it makes your entire home purchase so much easier and more relaxing. Then it could go different, it was a different lender, it was a different group of people.
Yeah. The last thing I'll say on title insurance, a question I get often is, if I'm buying title insurance, if the lender's requiring it, aren't I protected? Because let's say you only are putting down, only, right? It's all a lot of money. But if you're putting down 5%, 10%, 20%, and the lender owns the bulk of the property or is giving you the mortgage on the bulk of the property, the thing to know about title insurance is the lender can only use their policy if in a state of foreclosure, right? So if you lose the house, which we're not assuming that's going to happen, that's the only time that title insurance policy for the lender kicks in. So you want to be protected, because most likely, hopefully, if all goes as planned and well, if anything did pop up on a title issue, you're still in ownership, and the lender's policy does not kick in. Only in case of foreclosure are they protected. So, yeah, good thing to know. All right, we've deep dived into this today, and
I know. This is almost the first home buyer, kind of.
It's like no different, right? We'll be able to get a lot out of it, though, which I think will be great. So, another thing is, so now we've done all of that. You've gotten to the closing.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Right before the closing. So when we would meet again, every buyer actually has the right. I shouldn't say every writer. If you have a counsel, a buyer's attorney, they usually put in the purchase and sales agreement that you have the right to visit the property a few times prior to the closing. So, right now it's COVID time, right? So it's a little bit more tricky. Unfortunately, we're still in this time. It's a little bit more tricky to keep going to the property, especially if somebody still lives there. So in most cases, when a home seller sells their property, they still be living in the property until right before the closing, because they have the right to be in there literally until the time they're actually closing. The buyer goes to the closing table and signs everything, so the seller has the right to be in that property until that time. I always do a final walkthrough with all my buyers. So I ask the listing agent to ask their sellers when they're actually moving out. A lot of sellers move out the day before or maybe the same day of the closing. We go into the property, make sure that the property is in the same kind of condition as when we looked at it and you had the accepted offer. I go through with my buyers. It takes me a good half an hour. I run the water with them. I turn the heat on, the AC if possible. In the winter, you're not allowed to turn it on because it might break the system. But anyway, anything we can legally do, it does. And people's like, oh, let's try the AC. And it's like, 20 degrees. No, you can't, because it will break it. It probably worked and now it won't work anymore. So anything we can try, we go through the property, we walk through, we make sure everything is out. I always look in the refrigerator and the dishwasher. You have no idea how many home sellers forget to empty the refrigerator and the dishwasher, and Anyway, we'll look through everything, storage space, we'll take the time, and then we'll go to the closing. I'm right now, again, it's sad. I always used to go with all my buyers to the closing table. We realtors do not do anything at the closing table. It's only at the closing time. It's only really their counsel, the attorney, signing papers, signing all the mortgage documents. I always like to go and just say congratulations, bring a closing gift. Now I typically bring my closing gift to the walkthrough. A lot of lenders do not allow anybody else in at the time at the closing, only the buyers and
yeah. That's, and I don't know that will change. I don't know that will change. I don't think it,
because again, it's not we do. We don't. Nobody needs us there as realtors. We don't do anything. I always like to sit there and just see it through, and then say congratulations. And again, now I have to send everybody off to their closing by themselves. Their attorney, again, also very important. You have your attorney there.
Yes.
Build a relationship now with the attorney that will do all the bank work as well. And I think it's just more comfortable to the buyers that way if they have the same, legal counsel present as they had with the purchase and sales. And then after the closing, a lot of people also don't understand that they legally cannot get the keys right away. The keys are either being held with the attorney or with myself, or sometimes the listing agents want to hold the key. After you sign all the papers as the buyer, the deed has to be recorded at the registry of deeds. So anything you sign the deed, and the deed is one of the documents that cannot be signed electronically. A lot of documents, especially with Guaranteed Rate, Chant Benogian, sends all these great documents already beforehand that can be signed electronically. So it reduces the time at the actual closing table. The deed has to be signed in person, has to be delivered to the registry of deeds in person. So it will get delivered and then recorded. And only after the deed has been recorded to the new owner, so the buyer in this case, only then the buyer owns the property legally and can have the keys.
And the money is sent.
And the money is sent, exactly. Yes. So let's
the sellers like that part, right?
Exactly. If you give the keys out before, and God forbid the registry of deeds is backed up, right? Especially on a Friday, the property then all of a sudden doesn't get recorded until Monday. It happens very, very, very rarely. That's why you have a closing in the morning, right? And then the property will be recorded by the afternoon. I'm just saying worst case scenario, property didn't get recorded, buyers move in and something happens. God forbid there's a fire, I'm doing like the sign of the cross or something.
There's any tragic thing that happens.
The property is not insured. You are not insured because it's not your property at this point. It is so important, and a lot of buyers don't understand that. So if you schedule moving trucks, you can have a moving truck sit at the property. Most sellers are okay with having a truck in front of their house, or cannot get into the property and start moving and living in the property until it's legally yours. Unless you have there's one more thing before, and I'm sorry, but I'm going back on this. If you have a use and occupancy agreement, sometimes, especially if it's a new construction, the seller's already out, or actually other properties as well, and there's a document in hand saying, okay, it's not your property right now, but you have a use and occupancy agreement, meaning you can use the property even though you don't officially own it, then it legally protects you and you have insurance.
Yes, and that's another reason to have a great real estate attorney, because when your agent goes to the attorney and says, I need to use an occupancy, they'll negotiate that for you, draw it up, make sure you're properly protected and your property is properly protected.
Exactly. Yes, and you're not homeless, because let's say you're already
or staying at your house. Right?
Yes, and you can't get into your new house because it's not recorded where you want to go. You don't want to go into a hotel, then there's the use and occupancy agreement. Again, I have not had a situation, knock on wood, where somebody actually couldn't get into the property, but you have to have that agreement, side agreement, then the use and occupancy agreement, so everybody is legally, and it's more an insurance issue really, because you know,
Right,
you want to
and-
be protected.
And the sellers want to make sure that they're protected as well. That if like somebody slips and falls on the property and it's, you know, all that. So there's a lot of good things in there to think about with your agent and attorney. And you'll know, your attorney will let you know there's, you know, the registry's busy today. And, you know, like the last day of the month is a tough day to close because there's a lot of transactions happening. So they'll say either let's close in the morning, or Adriana will say maybe we should close on the 27th instead of 31st. I don't know. So
yeah, that's what I do a lot of times. I try not to schedule for the end of the month. Some people want it if they, you know, they say, oh, we don't, but our lease ends this day. That's also, again, another actually important thing. Most people will not know, especially if they're first home buyers, right? If they're renting, so let's say your lease expires March 31st, right? You're closing the end of March, you will not have a mortgage payment until May 1st because the mortgage is paid in reverse. Most people don't understand this. So they obviously don't want to make two payments, right?
Mhm.
So you're renting, you know, when you're renting, you have to pay your landlord on the 1st of every month. So for March, you already made your rent payment on March 1st. You're closing the end of March, you will not have a mortgage payment until the following months, even though you think, oh, we're closing March 1st, I'm going to have to pay my mortgage on April 1st. No, you have to pay your mortgage on May 1st.
Yeah.
So you really have this 1 month where you don't have a payment. So that's why I tell a lot of people, if you don't want to rush, let's close the middle of the month, right? So you can actually get into your home, or take, you know, a couple weeks to move, and you don't have to be out in the same day, but you don't have a mortgage payment because your mortgage gets paid in reverse. Most people, most first home buyers do not know that. I run into that all the time. And then they're very positively surprised. They're like, yay.
Yeah, they're like, I skip a payment. I'm like, actually, no, you paid it up front at your settlement statement, but it was rolled into the rest of your costs. It's the only time you pay your mortgage forward. And then for the rest of your life, your mortgage is paid behind you, unlike rent, opposite rent. So I think that that's another thing where experience comes into play. And anybody who is watching this video will see your home buyer seminar, anyone who works with you will benefit greatly, because this amount of experience does not just grow on trees or happen in real estate school when you get your license. And it comes from years of experience and practice and really understanding the nitty gritty of how the entire process works. So, yeah.
That's why it's so important to pick somebody experienced. And I feel bad because everybody has to obviously start somewhere.
Yes.
And it's very, especially right now, where it's so competitive, it's so hard for new agents that just don't have the experience, because it's very easy to get your real estate license, right? You go to school right now, it's online for a week, you get thrown out in the world, you don't get any more practice, so to say, right? You have your real estate license and let's go and sell homes. It's a very competitive business. You don't really get the training as in most when you start a new business, right? You have a manager that's there for questions, but we're all independent contractors and it's solely commission. So therefore, obviously there's not much, we're competing against each other, right? So you don't really have someone, an experienced agent that will say, oh yeah, these are all the things you have to do. You know what, don't worry, take my buyer so I don't get paid, and here are all the things you have to do. It sounds nice, but it just doesn't work like that in this business unless you really work under somebody and get paid.
Yeah, real mentorship and leadership.
Yeah,
and then they get your experience.
Correct, yes. But then, again, it's 22 years. Do I really want to give this out for free? No, you know what I mean?
Well, and you're busy. You're busy.
For my clients, I do. They get all of this for free. Really think about it, right? Buyers, clients, you pay nothing, but you get all this experience for free. But it took me 22 years to get to this point.
Yes.
And, and that's why I say to my clients, I said, you have to be my client to get this. If you're one of those shoppers, there's not many just shoppers out there anymore, because due to COVID, right? You can't just go into a lot of open houses. You have to make an appointment. But if you're just shopping around and you don't want to commit to me, I cannot commit to you. It has to be an equal relationship.
Yes.
A business relationship. You commit to me, I commit to you. You will get all my experience, my loyal, and I love to negotiate. And I'm very, if you tell me you want this property, I will do whatever it takes in reasons after I tell you, right?
Right.
I obviously check with you first, But if you tell me you want this property and you're okay with all these points that it will take for you to get this house for X amount of money, no more, I will do whatever it takes to get you this property. And, obviously I want my client's loyalty. There's nothing worse in this business. And I've experienced it, especially at the beginning, not right now anymore, but when I first started in the business and I showed 55 homes, I remember this to this day, 55 homes to clients, which usually doesn't take 55 homes.
Right.
And I decided to go to someone else and purchase a property, and I get nothing because we only get paid out of the proceeds from the sale, right? If there's no sale, we get nothing. And again, I tell people, you work hard in your job and hopefully you love what you're doing, right? But in the end of the day, you would like to get paid for the work.
Of course.
Right. And I talked to him and said, I don't know many people that like to work for free. And it is so important for buyers to understand that we are all solely on commission. So if somebody works, and I work 7 days a week, and I'm not saying that to brag, but in this business, if you want to be successful, and if you want to help your clients and you want to sell houses, you have to be available 7 days a week. It's the beast, as I say, of the business. Don't go with a part-time real estate agent. Okay. People say that to me, oh yeah, I'm working with such and such. I'm like, oh gee, I've never heard of the person. Are they new? No, but they're just doing it part-time. This is what happens with a part-time agent. Okay. A property comes on. We don't know when a property comes on. The buyers don't know when something gets listed. I don't know when something gets listed. I get my updates in the morning and I see this property coming on the market. I'm like, oh my God, this would be perfect for my buyer. My buyer will see the property as well in the updates, right? We have to go and see the property. So if you have a part-time agent that has a certain amount of hours, let's say they only work every day from 4 to 6, the property can't be shown during those times, right? 4 to 6, because it's up to the seller when they want to have buyers in there. And believe me, there is so many restrictions right now in order to get buyers in. If you're not available as the realtor, whenever the client, or in most cases right now, the listing is available to be shown, the buyer will lose that house. Okay. They will lose it. There's no going back. Nobody will wait for you or for your buyer's agent. Does not exist in this market. And I'm sorry to be so firm.
Yes.
But your agent needs to be available. And the reason why I'm on a team, so in 95% of the cases, you will get me, you will not get somebody else. Obviously, there's the 5% where something comes up, right? God forbid one of my kids gets sick. I'm a mom, right? There are those 5% of the cases where obviously I cannot make it. It's very rarely, but I have people on my team that are on my team and that I like and work with. I've worked with everybody on my team for at least 10 years. And I can send somebody to you, so you will not lose that property because
no matter what, right? No matter what, somebody will be available, right?
I'm telling you, when people say, do not go to a part-time, this business does not work part-time. It's not one of those businesses like a tutor you can do part-time, a hairdresser,
right?
I don't know. There's a lot of businesses you can do part-time and be very successful. Not in this business. It does not work. And I cannot stress that enough. And experience will make you win or lose a property right now. The connections you have in this business, the experience you have with other agents, it makes a huge difference for buyers to get a property, especially in this market right now. And again, I feel bad saying it because everybody has to start somewhere, right? And there's no, but it's just,
well, if you're arming people with the best information to help them, there's a lot of things beyond if they're licensed to look at as a realtor when you're selecting. Well, thank you so much. I feel like we got so much good information.
Yes. And I feel bad. We have done this. It's like over an hour now. So I felt,
oh my God. No, but I think that's actually